business for over 20-25 years. And I run my own company in Pune. We are a 10-year-old company. We do everything to do with marketing, branding, digital, social media, driving brands, getting their voice out, whether it's D2C, whether it's B2B, so on and so forth. Enough of me. Let's get on to talking about what today's topic is, developing a brand story and positioning. The idea of this, what I aim to do in this presentation is keep it a little simple, not overwhelmed, because I do understand that branding, positioning, marketing can be a little overwhelming when you have technical people, when product is where you focus on. So I'm going to try and make it as simple for you, and try and explain to you why it is important, apart from having a great product, to build a brand which lasts forever. Unfortunately, I have had some technical errors, so Siddharth and Yukta are going to help me in managing my presentation. So you'll probably hear me in between the conversation, telling them to change the slides. Siddharth, could you please get on to the next slide? Thank you. So yeah, what is brand? I mean, it's very simple. I mean, I have Amitabh Bachchan there because he's one of the biggest brand icons and a brand that we Indians would know. Brand doesn't mean that it has to be a product. Brand doesn't mean that it has to be a service. We are brands. I mean, Heena Bhatt is a brand. I'm selling myself every day. Y'all are selling yourself every day. So it's very important to remember that brands do not always mean a product or a service. Brand means a value, brand means a conversation, brand means a message. It could be humans, it could be animals, it could be any form of living or non-living things. Here I'm just trying to give you an idea of how important icons are and how important faces to brands are. Because the moment you see Amitabh Bachchan, you have a certain perception about him. While he's a movie, a huge movie blockbuster star, he's actually an artist. He's not really. I mean, everybody knows him from different places. IBM, one of the biggest technology company, Walt Disney, which makes dreams come true, which brings happiness to not just younger kids anymore, even adults. Bisleri, which has become like synonymous to water. Tell me the last time you've asked someone, "Meko kinli ka pani dena." I'm sure a lot of people, we still get used to saying Bisleri, because that's the brand and the equity that they've created. So it's very important. I wanted to show you guys these logos because it's very important to understand what attributes and what really emotions you feel when you see these identities. Thank you so much. Siddharth, could you move on? So yeah, what is a brand? We saw the logos there. We saw a human face there. Is brand a logo? Is it your name? Is it a design? Is it a color? When we talk about a brand, but Amitabh Bachchan doesn't have a logo. He doesn't have, and I mean his identity, his personality. He doesn't have a design. He has a name. His name is his brand. So no, a brand doesn't always have. I mean, while your execution of your brand becomes a brand name, becomes the color, but brand actually is forever. When you create a brand, you're creating a promise to your consumers, to your stakeholders, to the people around you. When you're making a brand, you are building an everlasting promise. The promise that defines your values, the promise that makes you want to start a business, the promise that defines what your product is. That what really brand is. It's very important to understand that we have so many brands around us. Every day we are exposed. Now with digital media, we are exposed with more than thousands of brands on an everyday basis, whether it's on social media, whether we are driving, whether it's a hoarding, whether it's a television ad, or even radio, or even Spotify music. how are you going to remember your brand? How are you going to remember not just your brand, but any brand? And that's why it's very important to remember that a brand is always going to last forever. A brand also does not mean that it defines only one product or one service. A brand can encapsulate multiple products and multiple services. A brand can have an horizontal as well as vertical products. So remember, a brand doesn't always, like Tata. I mean, we Tata is an example. We all know Tata, but we also know that Tata also has so many vertical businesses. And what helps us choosing Tata products? Because they've built a brand. So if I have to now fly a Tata airline, I would want to do that. If I want to stay in a luxury hotel, I would want to stay in Taj. If I want to now start shopping, Tata is coming up with a new digital platform. So I'd want to do that because I know Tata has built that credibility. I'll move on eventually talking about how those credibilities are formed and how we define each and everything. To that, moving forward. Yeah. So, is brand really important or product matters? Absolutely, product is always going to be your hero. Product is something that creates your brand. So, your first step is what you have to offer, whether it's a product or whether it's a service. Your brand is a name to what you're offering. It's very important first, considering that we are in a smart protein and in a Good Food India platform. We all know that for India, this category is quite new. While before we create the brand, before we define and we understand and we launch our product, how do we build this category? This category is built by creating, of course, these multiple products that you all offer, and these different kinds of interesting products that you all are going to go into the market. But I'm sure there are going to be a lot of me too products. There are going to be a lot more that will, once you define the market, because you guys are going to be the first movers. You guys are going to be in India, community and entrepreneurs who are going to really push this category forward, build that awareness, and create that need and solve that problem for our consumers. Um, Once that is done, I'm sure everybody is going to follow the bandwagon, as they always say, right? Why is it called a bandwagon? Because there is a bogey one after another. Then you don't want your products to be lost. You want your products to be identified and remembered. And that's when a brand comes into a picture. That's when a name comes to a picture. That's when your identity, that's where how people believe in your brand comes into picture. Why would somebody stick to a brand? I mean, what is a brand made of? Like I said earlier, a brand is made of values. A brand is made of what you want your brand to be. It could be functional, it could be value driven, it could be fun, it could be serious, it could be mass, it could be class, it could be simple, it could be complicated, it could be in any form you want. But you've got to realize, in all these attributes that we have for your product, what attribute do you want to give so that your brand is defined, so that you create that different identity or the different preposition for your brand. And that's how you start building loyalty. uh, I'm going to give you an example of Coca-Cola, which stands right here. Coca-Cola is just a soda. It's just a cola. But why do we choose a Coca-Cola? Because they've built a brand on happiness. They've built a brand on community and togetherness. Based on these very basic foundation of emotional benefits, right? And emotional cues and hooks, happiness, sharing, building your community, togetherness. They have built communication and advertising campaigns based on share a coke, open to happiness, which have made their brand grow and create oneness with their customers. So, quite an important, and this is very important in the beginning of when you're ready with your product, when you're building your brand, is how do you want to define your brand? what really creates, what defines your brand from from your competition or anybody else who would might be a follower or a me too. A brand is also face of your business, as simple as that. Your company name could be an ABC, but your brand name is something that not everybody knows what the name of Pepsi is. It's Varun Beverages, but nobody knows about the company that, I mean, businesses know, but a consumer doesn't need to know. A consumer knows what Pepsi is. Um, so it's a face of your business. It's the credibility of your service on your product. When you build a brand, you're building a credibility and you're building a trust. When a consumer is coming and choosing a brand A over a brand B, they're choosing to trust themselves. They're choosing to trust you because you've made that promise, that brand promise of giving them the right product. It is your vision, end of the day. A brand is what you want your company to be. A brand is how you want to grow, what your business wants to be. And it is also a recall. One of the most important things a brand brings is it brings memory and brings stickiness and it brings recall. Like if somebody tells me I want a cola, I'm going to say Coca Cola, because that's the kind of recall value they have created. That's the kind of strong credibility and trust that they have created for the brand. Yes, please, Siddharth, could you move forward? So simple. What are the 7 steps? Like I've been talking about what brand is, what values are. So how do you develop a brand? I mean, there are 7 very simple steps in identifying what your brand should be and define, and what the circle and what its attributes and personalities should be. So define your purpose. Why am I here? How can I add value? What is my product going to do? Is my meat alternative going to solve environmental problem, or it's going to be tasty food and giving another food choice or a healthy choice for my consumer? What will be my mantra? This is very important. Until and unless you define what your product's purpose and your company's purpose is, you will not be able to create an identity and create those attributes for your brand. Know your competitors, very very important. Why do we need to know your competitors? Because while we definitely want to be in the category, while we want to mirror a few category cues which are similarities in the category, we also need to be different. We also need to up our ante. We also need to up our game from our competitors, whether it's India, whether it's globally. So you need to understand where they stand. What are their are they quality driven? Are they volume driven? Are they quantity driven? Um, what is it that they are talking? That will help you in understand and also creating a brand sketch. Determine your TG, your target group, your ideal customer profile. I think you guys had a session before where the moderator spoke to you about, the panelist spoke to you about how to identify your customer, how to figure out where your consumer is before you go to market. So it's very important. This is very important. Why, now you would ask? I mean, you know what who your consumer is, but why is it important to identify? Is because then you will know how you want your brand to speak to them. Because your brand is also not just an identity and the face of your company, it's also the conversation that you have with your consumers or your stakeholders or your employees. Once you know, for example, I'm just giving you an example. Once you know that your brand is a young brand, for example, Nika is speaking to women. So if you see, the communication is also always women centric. It's always fun. It's always very petite. It's always, so it's not going to be serious. It's always going to be women centric and women driven. So it's very important to remember that TG group. Then craft your narrative. You understand your purpose. You understand your competitors, because you of course have to be different from what your competitors are. You've understood where your consumer is, you know ideally he and she are. Then your narrative is your brand story. I'll of course come to the brand story bit a little later, because I want to dwell on it further. But that's when you decide what your storytelling for your brand should be. how you're going to talk. Should it be your story and your vision as an entrepreneur and as a business owner that then resonates in your brand, or should it be a completely different brand story which has, in a way, cues of what you are, but definitely what your consumers are looking for? Then you create your brand identity. Your brand identity is your logo, your distinct, unique typeface, your which is your name, the colors, the splashes, the tagline, so that we could remember, and most importantly, live it. Breathe in your brand every day, not just your product, because your product is functional. Your brand is always going to be emotional. The more you live with your brand and you talk that language, the more you're going to internalize yourself, and then you know how you're going to speak to your consumers about. So here are a few examples to give you an idea of how people thought of developing a brand and what made them. So for example, Dove in 2004, almost like 2 decades ago, um, just recently we've been talking about, I mean, with digital, we've been talking about empowerment and self-esteem and respect and all of that. But back in 2004, Dove as a brand decided to create and to be a purposeful brand. And they created, and back in those days, they started showing real women. I mean, I'm sure all of us would remember the beauty campaign and the real beauty campaign where they had real actual women talking on in their home couch, and that is the purpose and that is the reality that they wanted to create, that surrounds the brand, that surrounds Dove as a soap, which is not a beauty or a cosmetic soap, but a soap that will make a woman feel purposeful, make a woman feel, build her self esteem, make a woman believe in a real beauty. So that was the purpose, and that is what that brand created. It created its emotional cues, which which stood on real beauty as their brand values. Another example is Uber and Lyft, which is our, we all know what Uber and Lyft is. Lyft is again another brand in the US. Why I have taken this competition? Because it'll be interesting to understand how Uber is a more elite kind of a brand. Uh, Both of them entered their market at the same time. Uber focused on professional and experience and comfort. They tried to be a little more snooty. They introduced with black cars. If none of us know here, Uber was the first. When Uber launched their cars, they were only black, sleek cars. So they wanted to be premium. So their conversations also with in their communication also was very, very elite. So, for instance, drivers had to meet certain standards for their cars. I mean, like I said, black, and they had to be a sedan, they had to have a certain leather couch so that when a rider and a consumer is sitting, he feels pampered. At the same time, Lyft was a more younger brand. If you see the colors also of the logo here, Lyft is more pink, more youthful. Lyft drivers more conversational with their consumers. They would ask their consumers to come sit in front of them with them so that they can have a conversation. They're more friendly. So imagine the stark difference. Just in front of you is Uber and Lyft logo, and you can see how they've created a strong different identity. While you see it, you understand how fun and elite it is, but their messaging and their communication and their brand voice also similarly adds to the whole brand value and the brand definition. Um, Siddharth, could you please move forward? So yeah, what's in the story? This is the most important part. I mean, we've been speaking about brand. We're talking about, okay, I've built my brand. I've created a logo. It looks interesting. Oh, it looks like the Medusa of Coke, or it looks like the Nike's Dash. I mean, this is it. I mean, now people will remember. I mean, I'm giving a great product. I am giving them a great identity, and it's quite unique. It's different. So your job is not done there, because your brand, it's still intangible. Your voice is going to create that communication with your consumers. You need to create a story and a narrative for your brand. It's like I said, right? When you start defining a brand name, there are certain checklists that you create. Like they need to have values, they have to have a certain personality, they need to have certain vision of your company. You've built that, but how are you going to communicate it, right? So you communicate through your brand story. Your brand story and your narrative will define how consumers see your brand, how consumers want to connect with your brand. A successful brand story should seamlessly make customers become a role player, which means that when you're giving them the story, how can your consumer be a part of the brand, right? Your story needs to develop that narrative that makes them want to be a part of the brand. For example, I mean, I'll come to these two examples as well, but like Coke had done Share a Coke campaign. They made their consumers share that Coke and have their name on that Coke bottle. Why are they doing this? Because they are creating that brand narrative, which is happiness, which is togetherness and community, which we spoke about. For example, Starbucks. We all know Starbucks has created a third place philosophy. What is a third place? Like their home place. They want their consumers to come to their coffee shop and feel at home. You can work from there, you can relax there, you can belong there. They don't want to be an elite 5-star premium coffee shop. They want to be a young and a youthful coffee shop, which makes their consumers feel like they are a part of it and they can just kick back their shoes and behave just like they are in their room. Nike, just do it. It's emphasis on elite athleticism. We when we Over the years we've seen Nike campaigns and how empowering they are. The tick mark, of course, talks about affirmation. It talks about you're doing everything right. But they never said they are doing everything right. The logo always gave exhibited this value. But to that, they added a tagline which says, just do it. I mean, imagine these two are your two different brand messages that come together. I'm sorry, guys, if I have a dog. Just give me a minute. Sorry about this. Uh, so imagine, like, you have a checklist and a tick mark, and then you have a tagline which says, just do it, which emphasizes on your capabilities to just go out there and not procrastinate. They're giving you that direct message that you have the capabilities, we are empowering you, we are giving you these means, so there is nothing to stop you or make you feel lazy. And honestly, when you see that, you already get these different cues and your behavior starts changing. So that's and that's their narrative, that's their story. The story is to empower everybody to be to at, we are giving you the shoes, so just run. We are giving you the shoes, so just play. Another thing it's very important to know is the difference between brand storytelling versus the brand story. So brand story is what you are trying to tell and the story that your brand has. For example, what Coke is trying to do, it's trying to bring an emotional angle of happiness. It's trying to bring community. What Nike is doing, it's telling you to not be lazy. It's telling you to take that step. It's telling you to uh, bring that power that you have. That is the story that the brand is creating. A brand storytelling is the execution of the story. It's basically what you or your agencies or any other person will do to execute what the story that you're building. It could be in any form. So, yeah, a brand story is a narrative around who, what, when, why, and how your company and brand came to be. It's about your vision. And it will keep growing of period of time. One very important aspect of brand story is also that while you have the foundation of what your purpose and how you define and what you want to communicate, but your brand story will always build over the years. Because it's very important while you have the basic foundation of what it means and it wants to convey. But your communication and messaging needs to keep changing every year, every 2 years, because your consumers are changing, because we are live in a dynamic world. So while the base remains, giving people a space for community, your communication and messaging will keep changing every year through different forms. So yeah, Siddharth, could you please move to the next slide? Yeah, next is what's the positioning, what's brand positioning, and uh, we keep talking about brand, we kept talking about brand story, people talk about brand positioning as well. So is positioning branding or marketing? I mean, it's very important to understand, because we keep saying brand positioning, right? So it is a marketing strategy that allows you to understand where your business stands in the market and how you should be placed, positioned to attract your customers. Positioning is exactly what the word means. It means where you want to place yourself, how you want your consumers to perceive you or see you. I have a diagram here. I hope you guys are able to see it. It's created a different, there are different levels of how you can go ahead, create a positioning, create a perception. In while you, once you've built the brand, where you want to sit that brand, where the brand needs to sit. So yeah, so the most important part, and that we always say and everybody knows, what is your differentiator, right? I mean, when you're coming with a product, when you're coming with a brand, what is your unique selling proposition? How are you different from your competitors, or are you the same but your approach is different? So it's very important to remember that. Like, why will your customer buy you? So you need to remember and you need to identify how can you differentiate yourself. Then why buy me? Like, why should a customer buy you over another XYZ brand? What are the benefits that the customer are getting? um, it could be just a price benefit, so that's very tactical, right? I mean, now that's where brand comes into picture. uh, like, if you have a strong brand value, and even if you are a couple of bucks pricier than your competition, a customer is going to come and buy you because you've built that credibility. Your brand is bringing that trust because you've created that brand story, you've created that narrative for them. So yeah, so what is the value that you're going to add to them? What are the benefits that you're giving to them, and how do they feel when they buy you? That's very, very, very important. When a customer, because they are putting their entire trust, how, what is the feeling that you want them to get? That's why people talk about experience, right? A customer experience and a brand experience. So what is that brand experience and the feeling you want to give your customers? Stakes, this is a very common term which is used in gambling, we probably going to use here. It's derived from it means it's the basic offering. You have to remember that we are a category. We have to have, while you are different, while you are unique, we've got to have certain aspects of your brand which follow the category norms. You don't want to alienate your customer. We are already in a category which needs a lot of education, and then the discovery will happen. So in that education platform where people know this, we don't want to be a complete differentiator where you only have a few number of innovators, as we say, in our customer profile. You have only few people who understand you, or they're trying to rack their brains around to understand what is this brand trying to sell me. So you've got to create that personality, uh, while it's different, while it's giving that customer benefit. It needs to fill into that category of which defines what the smart protein product is. And satisfactors, which means elements which are indispensable and without which you will not have a client. Like, these are the basics of my client needs a healthy food. uh, so I'm giving them an alternative which is tasty. Or for example, like Impossible Burgers did, right? while since we are in that category. So Beyond Meats went behind customers who believed in environment, who believed like they want their communication, their narrative was about how do I like we want to change the world, we want to bring sustainability, we want to make change in the environment, uh, and that's very niche. But there are takers for this because they want to add value to the environment, which is your why buy me. But at the same time, here's Impossible Burger who's saying that yes, my underlying objective is to be to give back to environment, to stop all the madness that is happening in the poultry industry and the lobbying. But why am I just talking about being health conscious? Why am I not going straight to the meat eaters? Why am I leaving the meat eaters? I'm not telling them that you need to choose me a meat, a beef burger to a protein alternative. I'm just saying that taste me. If you're a food enthusiast, come try me because I know that I can offer you something. So you've got to bring that distinction where and that's what is interesting about building the brand, going towards your customers and telling them that um, and expanding that horizon for them, and not making them feel alienated, not making them feel that do you I want to really try this because this is not my cause. My cause is not environmental friendly, but I mean I'm a food enthusiast, I might as well have tasty food. So that's the difference. So yeah, that's the positioning that they created. Siddharth, if you could move to the so yeah, here's a great example of the good dot. So I wanted to give explain and give a little more detail of how a brand name is made, how what they are trying to talk, and what their dialogue is, and how positioning created. Like I was talking, right? What is the difference between better for us or one of us? That's exactly the comparison that I was giving between Beyond Meats and Impossible Burger. Impossible Burger was trying to be one of you and one of everybody. Beyond Meat is trying to say that we are better because we are doing, not we are better, but we are doing better for the environment. So yeah, let's take a great example because I think Good Dot did a great branding exercise. Um, to talk and to build this category and to make message very simple, right? The brand name of the company shows that they are good, like as simple as that. And they're good for the people, they are good for the planet. The dot of goodness with the company, and they promise to serve the best, like the good. And you're in the food category, right? We have the red mark for non-veg, the green mark for vegetarians. But they just nailed it. They said, here we are spreading green, we are good for everything. And apart from the dot, actually use the brand name Good Dot and just create a circle around it. So it's for all the people who decide to switch to vegan, will have to have that dot of goodness. So what are they trying to say? Here they are creating, right? Here they are switching their customers. They are telling people to switch their choices by talking about the importance of why it's necessary to be healthy and why smart protein alternatives are good for their body, and how we are exposed to different kinds of contamination, and why we need to respect our body and take care. The logo, right? The logo dot has a simple but impactful logo, like I was saying. While the name is Good Dot, the logo is a dot. It's a green dot. It's a green color which signifies vegan or plant based products. It also shows that they are good for the planet Earth and the company works on saving planet rather than exploiting it. Again, I'm just reiterating what they've been, it's right there. The tagline, a little good add up. Like now, imagine why they would say it's a little good add up. Why are they saying it's little? I mean, they must have thought, right? This is your brand voice. Your brand voice is do a little good. It will add up to the entire environment. That's all they're trying to say. Very simple, extremely strong messaging, and great narrative through the tagline. Yeah, what is the USP? Good Dot wants to revolutionize the future of food with scalable products that are accessible and, of course, affordable. And that's one of the things that they want to narrate, right? They don't want to be an expensive product. They want to be a product which masses are able to buy and they are accessible to. So, yeah, Siddharth, please, moving forward. Yeah, so while we talk about positioning, while we talk about how we want to position ourselves in the market, amongst in the mind of our consumers who have so many things going on and have so many brands exposed, how how do I do this? You do this with your value proposition, which is again your unique selling proposition, your unique selling point. Here's a diagram which talks about what your customer needs is, what your offering is, and what your competitor's offering is. Where you need to be is right in between, which is your strategic positioning. Where your customer need is taken care of, you are in the competitors, but you are still very different and you are in the center. In the value proposition also, a lot of people, a lot of brands actually and companies, they have very different way of even promoting their value proposition or doing their positioning as well. There are two ways of doing it. One is core branding, which is where the product's core offering is being spoken of, or the core offering is positioned in the market. And the surround branding is where they don't really promote the products, their core offerings, but they are promoting the attributes that enhances their brand positioning. A simple example for this would be a car manufacturer. um, One car manufacturer would probably promote the mileage and the functionality of the car, which is actually what their core offering is, and that is their core branding. Another car manufacturer would probably say, okay, everybody's talking about mileage and everything, let me talk about earth and environment. So let me talk about the ecological benefits of my car and how eco-friendly my car is, and there will be buyers for an environmental friendly car. So that is your surround, because a environmentally car can also talk about its mileage, of course can talk about its core branding and their core offering, but they want to use the other attributes to promote, and so that they again become very very unique. Their proposition and their value is very very distinct. Yeah, Siddharth, move forward. Yeah, so I've just tried to do some exercise here where uh, I've tried to, while we spoke a lot about how your brand name should be, what the value should be, what the purpose is, what your narrative, your story needs to be, what your positioning and your USP and your value proposition should be. Let's try and sketch a smart protein brand, right? Let's try and see how we can build this based on the 7 steps that we spoke about while building a brand. So what's my purpose? So I'm saying, so here this is quite hypothetical, everyone. So I'm just racking the brains. I'm saying, so okay, what's going to be a purpose for my brand? Um, to breaking away from calling it an alternative meat or dairy substitute. I don't want my product or my smart protein brand to be kept calling as an alternative daily or meat substitute. uh, but I'm seeing that my competitors are being advocates of that, right? So, and hence my purpose is that I want to break away from it so that I can find my unique identity. Whom am I going to? What my target consumer is? My target consumers are food enthusiasts. They are people who enjoy tasty food and like exploring new food, and if I'm giving them great taste, they are not really going to uh, worry about if it's good or if it's health. It's just the taste that brings that product delight and that customer delight. um, yeah, how is my communication or my brand narrative going to be, right? Making food choice and options fun and delightful, right? I want my story, I want my brand to because I want to break away from making it be very serious. I want my brand to have fun, my brand to delight my customers, my brand to say that here's me, a quirky product, try me and have fun while you're doing this. How is it going to look, right? How do I want to create my brand identity if I am talking to people who are food enthusiasts? where I'm trying to break away from this alternative, where I want it to be delightful and fun, then definitely my brand name is going to be quite fun. It's going to be very youthful, not very, very non-serious, and definitely colorful, right? I want people to feel happy when they see it. I want my customers to feel get that happy enzymes when they see a healthy brand talking about just food choices and having tasty food. And yeah, like I said earlier, I would want to live it by then creating different communications with my stakeholders, with my employees, with my investors, with my consumers, of having fun time and being delightful and happy when they are choosing me a fun, smart alternative protein brand. Yeah, Siddharth, moving forward. Yeah, in conclusion, very simple. Stay very consistent with your offering. When you've decided in creating a strong product, and when you have invested so much time in building a product, then building a brand which identifies with your personality, your company values, stay consistent. Don't keep changing your brand communication because your consumer is going to get confused, and you don't want your consumer to get confused between different stories that you're saying. Yeah, stay true to your values and prepositions. Very, very important, because it's very, very easy to lose loyalty nowadays, and especially in the category that we are. The more we stick to what our values are, the what our USPs are, the more our consumers are going to connect with us. Yeah, know your people, like we right always say, and your last session has always been saying, you're doing this for consumers. So know them and continue to know them. Don't detach with them, uh, because that is how your brand is also going to grow. And absolutely be patient, because like I said in the beginning of this session, brand takes a long time. It's everlasting. It's a promise. A promise is always an everlasting process. So you've got to be patient for your brand to be built. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in 1 year. Even if it happens in 1 year, you might lose it because you'll think it's a fad, or consumers will think it's a fad. So yeah, this is me. Now if we have any question and answers, I'm more than happy to take them on.
So yeah, probably one quick thing, yeah, to the participants. If you have any question you want to have, any conversation, do raise your hands so that we can yeah, give you access to the mic. And I think just having yeah, that conversation yeah, directly might be more helpful.
Yeah.
So I think while yeah, the participants you probably will get to their your question. A couple of things that struck me when you were having or in your own presentation, right? So when you're talking about food and especially with an Indian context, a lot of food is also maybe yeah, subculture of sorts. Does it make more sense to address individuals, or does it make more sense to address your community to begin with? And also because we need to keep be aware of the fact that we are talking about a niche segment as of now in India. So
Yeah.
how does it work? So what comes first, individual versus your community, and also from your brand perspective, does it make sense to shift after a point of time from individual to community, or vice versa?
Okay, interesting question. So an individual is built by a community. We have to remember that. We have a lot of our influences, and you rightly said, right, through culture. And your culture defines your individuality. So you definitely, so when you're talking to the individual. But when you're building a brand, you're building it for a community. You're not, so that's why you also localize your communication. you're talking to them. So that's the execution of when I'm talking to a consumer. But you definitely are talking to a community, you're not talking to one person, because there are inferences of, and that is how you influence one another. And we definitely don't want a herd mentality. Oh, this one's gone, so I want to follow. But India again, right? We are together. As we also, humans are also social butterflies. We do everything together. We, and food as the most important part is eaten not individually, it's eaten together. So when you're also building that brand, or when you're building a communication, you have to keep in mind the family. You have to keep in mind the friends, and those are your community. And then you speak to them individually. Absolutely.
Interesting. So, few of the very interesting brands that I have seen when it comes down to food, right? So I'll probably address food and environment a little differently. So if I'm talking about
Okay.
environment, one of the top organizations that comes to my mind is probably the outwear gear, outdoor uh, gear called Patagonia. I
Yeah.
think yeah, I think it is the Patagonia, and they generally don't talk about your products at all, right? They only talk about environment, the world,
Yeah.
etc., etc., right? And when we talk about food, we talk about one interesting brand that comes to mind is there's this brand called Misfit Foods, again based in the US. uh,
Hmm.
Basically they take every odd shaped looking your fruit or vegetable, they put in a box and they send it out to customers. But if you look at it from both these your brand perspectives, they kind of address individual uh, angles, right? Or they take the feeling of not being left behind for mistake, right?
The
uh,
voice is breaking. They don't take the feeling of.
and they work on the feeling of not being left behind, right?
Yeah.
And with the entire misfit angle playing up, a lot of individuals then kind of tend to relate to it.
Right.
um, and which is where the your confusion typically then comes about. Saying how can angles of these sort, which can be very strong messaging for sure,
Yeah.
and you're creating a community of people who feel the same way, which is what your typically branding also tends to do. But as a startup, how do I decide this? How do I figure what is going to work? Can I actually afford to make mistakes in building a brand?
So interesting. So you know what they are doing? Clutter breaking things. Okay, and we are seeing clutter breaking work happening in India as well. We are seeing brands exposing themselves and going far out to consumers, where we as simple as lens cut, right? I mean, it's not environment friendly, but who thought that you're going to make specs or frames look, make a build a business out of it, right? I mean, it's as simple as that. You didn't think that okay, you're going to make a $1 billion business with just having changing frames every day, right? So that's what it is, right? That's what they are trying to do. And they are breaking because there is absolutely a need in the market.
Hmm.
There was absolutely a need in the market.
Yeah.
So what is your brand trying to do? Your brand is either solving a problem, or it's creating a need, or developing a need, right? Through your
Developing.
product.
Hmm.
It's also developing a need. No, there might be one, like for example, your lens. I mean, you wore frames, but you there was a need already, but you developed it further, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
coming back to your question, you will make mistakes. We will all make mistakes, and that's why it's okay to, I still see, you need to have that, how do I say it, you can talk to an individual, but you need to have the risk bearing capacity of talking to an individual, because you're going to be different,
Hmm.
right? uh, do I want to take that risk right now when I'm building the category, where it's so new in India? Or do I want to not really follow what everybody is doing, don't be a me too, but create my own niche by yes, like these guys do, right? If they're creating interesting packaging, so that packaging becomes my voice. That packaging is distinction. You're personalizing it, right? So maybe your communication, right? Maybe your brand is not really different, but a packaging is also a subset of your brand. What experience you're giving to a brand through a very different looking product, but again, then it also depends on, um, do I want to spend that much? Does that work from a cost point of view, and so on and so forth, right? You really need to have that risk bearing capacity to really break that clutter. But yes, you will make mistakes in building the brand. You will. Why will you make mistakes? Because our consumers keep changing their mind every day. So they are changing their mind every day. One day I want to be a vegan, one day I don't want to be a vegan. One day I want to start working out. Oh no, I'm very bored, I don't want to work out. Right? They keep changing, but how do we bring that symmetry to them? How is my brand going to bring that structure in their daily life? So that is what, and you need to see that, you need to see, that's where your individual communication or your branding comes in. That if my consumer, once I've identified and this is his daily life, where am I coming in his daily life, and can my brand be a part of this on his daily life, and bring that and add that
I think we
stickiness.
got one of the your participants who wants to ask something. Yeah, please to go ahead.
Yes.
Hi, Hina. So I have
Hi.
a quick question. Like now that we're talking about mistakes, right? Like a lot of brands do go on this journey of rebranding. So what are some uh, qualities or issues or factors that we should consider when we go about like repositioning or rebranding of projects and even brands?
So yeah, it's fine. So why do people, so okay, so there are two ways people rebrand themselves or reposition themselves. One is because you're traditionally, you are very old, and you need to move and you need to be more futuristic, and that's why the positioning and the branding and the typeface and the identity changes. The second is, they started with thinking that this is what a consumer, my customer wants, and maybe I'm not able to connect with my audience. So of course you do your brand research. There is no harm in making a brand change, there is no harm, but you have to do your research before you do your repositioning, before you change your brand name. You have to know this, because you can't then do it for the next 5 to 10 years. You should not. So when you are repositioning it, it's fine, because you are going to build that narrative, you are going to tell them, you are also going to so when you're also doing that story transition, right, you are going to you're not going to do it overnight, you're also going to give your consumers that feed slow and steady, so that they can also digest and internalize the change and the shift that the brand is offering them. So absolutely, it's not difficult, it's not a no no, but definitely you have to transit very very carefully, and involving your customers in it, and making them feel that they are the center, and that's why you are changing, so that they don't feel that you're just doing it because you're a company that is thinking only uh, by yourself, and not your, it's not inclusive of your customers expectations. And yes, but once you change it, please don't keep changing, because then you're confusing your audience completely. Then they are just not going to trust you over a period of time. So yeah, it's completely fine to reposition and rebrand, if it's done, if the hand holding is right and the right research is done.
Great. If I may ask a follow-up question like to that,
Yes.
may I know if there has been any one of your favorite rebranding brands around the world or anything that you would like to share with us today?
So there is one of my favorite. it's not rebranding, but it's a branding that has gone wrong, which is Gap. And I don't know if everybody, I mean, so Gap traditionally was a 1980s retro brand, and I'm a 90s 80s child. So I remember even when I was 5 6 year old, that blue and that very very traditional elongated uh, Gap icon. And a few years ago, they rebranded and they made themselves look like an IT, a technology brand. And consumers and the audience just didn't relate to a retro jeans wear, a denim wear, which went so wrong. So imagine that they, in one day, they had to go back to being the traditional. So that is one of my branding gone wrong and coming back to the old logo memory of a branding exercise. So yeah, and it was like the whole the whole world was in shock when that happened.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. I think we
Any
have two more comments.
anyone else in the room wants to ask any question? Please do raise the hand. We'll give you access to your mic to have the conversation. In the meanwhile, one other quick yeah, question from my end. Uh, Also coming in from the entire startup space, right? Uh, One of the things that I initially struggled with when I had my own startup, which then also helped me experience the importance of probably your branding and how you brand, was the identification of your value systems.
Yeah, very important.
How does one go about doing it? Because there are a plethora of possible your value systems to pick from. But if you have to pick
Right.
up five your prime ones, how does one go about doing it?
So it's very simple, right? You always create your SWOT analysis. Everybody knows what your strength, weaks, opportunities, and threats are, and that is a starting point for even your value systems. That is a starting point for anything that you do. And when you identify what, because your value systems will define your brand and also bring your value proposition, right? So when you're so strong in knowing what your weaknesses, what your opportunities and your threats are, your strengths become your value systems. And I mean, there are so many of, you have multiple theories and you have Boston grids and all of that, but it just becomes very overwhelming, right, as a startup, because you're already focusing on your product, you're already focusing on getting the money together to launch and to do GTM, right? You're already figuring out your employees and your teams and everything. So in all of the, and at the same time, I want to have a fantastic product with a fantastic brand name which attaches to my values, right? So and I keep telling all my clients as well, don't complicate it. Your value systems are what made you build your product. As simple as that. Your value systems are your emotions and your functionality. Let's just say that. And because these are the only two plays that you want to play on. You don't want to go beyond that, because the more you go beyond that, you're going to complicate it. And then you get confused and you're confusing your market and your audiences as well. So while you're functional, but you have to ride on emotions, and your value systems have to be different emotional aspects of what your brand gets defined.
But then does my your value systems for the your brand I build, does it kind of then reflect into the kind of TGA I'm looking out for?
Okay, so I think in my presentation I also said that it's not always that uh, what your value system is needs to be resonated with your brand. It
Hmm.
could be two different
Yep.
identities, completely two different identities. When you're building a value system, you're building it for the brand, which will define your consumers. Biggest mistakes what brand owners do is they assume what the consumer wants because they want it. So
And
your
can it
value
also work?
system.
So can it also work the other way around? Once I've identified what my customer is, I try to metamorphose my brand to fit that consumer.
So that's what, right? So you know what your customer wants, okay? That's when your entire your 7 steps or even your different system or processes come in. What is your value proposition? What does my customer want? What is my competitor offering? Where am I at? Right? So what is my unique selling proposition? Yes, you see, this is always going to be a fight. The fight is always going to be, do I want to impose what I have created because I know that this is a great product and there is no competition to it, but is there a need in the market? Okay, there is a need in the market. How do I build that market? Okay, there is a huge need in the market. Now I'm going to create a product and then create a brand which has a requirement in the market. Honestly, that works. I'll
Hmm.
tell you why. The other way around it works is because then you are building your value system. The thing is, you are creating, you're not changing yourself. You're not changing the you're not changing your beliefs, or you're not changing what you want to create. If you're changing that, then there is definitely a loss. What you are trying
Hmm.
to do is you are trying to figure out, in my value system, if this works. It might work 4 out of 10, but at least I know that these 4 are my winners and the rest 6 is what the consumer wants. But you definitely have to have a product market fit. That's why they say a product market fit, right? I mean, it's a product that needs a market viability. It's not something that and come what may, if there is a requirement, if you don't do it, somebody else will do it.
Hmm.
So while your product offerings and everything could be functional, or it could be like the gambling stakes that I was saying, your value systems and your beliefs can come as an additional
Yeah.
positioning and USP
Yeah.
for your brand.
I think one last question from my side before I stop and
Yes.
I'll get others to also chime in. What would be maybe 4 or 5 very basic things that your startup could do to start establishing their your brand? Can be online, offline, can be articles, thought your thought leadership kind of articles, right? Uh, what could be the 4 or 5 things which could potentially need the least amount of resources?
Hmm. Okay.
Because I think a lot of the startups that exist in this space are also heavily a resource constraint.
Resource country. Yes. So the 4 and 5 things, right? Number one, start talking to your consumer as a brand owner. You be the face in the beginning. While you have no resource, be the face of your business, be the face of your brand, because that's where your credibility will come. Then build that narrative. That narrative does not need to have your face all the time. It could just be what you're doing and what your brand or your product is doing and your team is doing. Third is simple. Go out in the market, talk to the customers, get them to talk, and use digital media. It's the most. And why I'm saying digital, also because resources are limited, but this is where you connect with your audience. This is where people are exposed to the most, exposed to you all the time. Use your network. You have to use your network, whether it's your LinkedIn profile, whether it's your family community and everything, to spread the word about your business. So these are 4 5, I think 4 things which are very important, which can be done, and everything digitally. um, I don't think it's important. I mean, there are so many other smaller activities that startups and entrepreneurs can do, but I think that requires a lot more time investment, like going the community driven, right? Doing a lot of these small activities and everything. But I feel you have to be the advocate, you have to be the face. Let them see what your story is. Let them see what your where you come from, why you started. Be completely transparent. And that's what ID did. I mean, when we there was a huge ID campaign where they went live the ID Atta, when they went live, right? I mean, they showed that nothing is contaminated and they went live throughout the day. So that's where your brand credibility will come. So show them what you're doing. As much as you're transparent, you will build that brand stickiness. And it's being transparent does not cost anything.
Actually, that's a very interesting thing to do.
Yeah.
Just like a way to show who you are at any point in
Yeah.
time. It'll be very interesting.
And
Um,
that's what actually consumers want that nowadays. They
hmm,
want things which are real. Like they and your your Gen Zs and millennials who are actually your adopters of the category that we are in, these guys, while they're exposed to social media and the influences, they are very, very smart. They they are also health conscious, so they are also environmentally aware. So
hmm,
when they are investing that time in the brand, they want to know what's happening behind the brand, and then they become your advocates. That becomes simpler, right? When you're transparent, then they start talking for you and they become your brand ambassadors. So, and that's what needs to be done.
hmm. Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there aren't any more questions, I think we can wrap up for the day. Hina, thank you so much for being with
Thank you
us
so
today
much. Thanks
and
a
for your
lot, guys.
wonderful
Thank you.
presentation. And
Thank
thanks to
you.
all the participants for joining us today.
Thank you
Have
so
a great
much.
evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thanks, Sinam. Bye.
Thank you.